Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, waiting for what's supposed to be an epic blizzard to bury us under a couple feet of snow. Hopefully, I'll be able to get these things out before we lose power. Anyway, I'm here with the five greatest Berlioz conductors. Now, Berlioz conductors are a special breed. There is no question about that, because Berlioz music is this very odd combination of incredible daring and vision and reverence for classical structures and complete insanity. And it takes, well, a certain mindset to be able to do it really, really well. I think the first person here on my list illustrates that with particular vividness. John Eliot Gardiner. He has been devoted to Berlioz since the beginning of his career. He conducts really fine Berlioz. And, it always surprised me that somebody as sort of, tight-assed as Gardiner would be a good Berlioz conductor. But I realized it all made sense after that marvelous incident during a performance of Les Troyens in France, where, he punched out one of the singers who exited stage left instead of stage right or whatever, and he got hysterical and he hit the guy, and then he resigned all of his posts and all that. Well, that was a real Berliozian trick there that Gardiner did. And I understood that underneath that egomaniacal disciplinarian lies a really violent thug just waiting to escape. And that's really marvelously Berliozian. And that explains why his Berlioz, I think, has been so convincing. There is, of course, that sort of strictness, but on the other hand, these eruptions of violence and irrationality. And so, Gardiner has earned his stripes as a genuine Berlioz conductor. After that, a totally different area, Seiji Ozawa. Ozawa principally for fabulous recordings of The Damnation of Faust and, above all, Romeo and Juliet, which is just glorious. Ozawa is a French music specialist, or he was, before his passing. Later in life, he returned to, Brahms and Beethoven and Mahler and that stuff. He did it very, very well. But earlier in his career, he was a fabulous conductor of French music, and his Berlioz was really very, very good. It was maybe a little bit contained, not all over the place, but he did have the Boston Symphony, which was, the world's great Berlioz orchestra, and he maintained that tradition and actually supplemented it in some ways. So I think he deserves a lot of credit for being an excellent Berlioz conductor when he chose to get into it. Igor Markevitch, wow. Now, there's a really interesting case, because Markevitch was the total opposite of somebody like John Eliot Gardiner. I mean, Markevitch was a contemporary composer, Stravinsky type, a real intellectual. I mean, almost icy cool in his emotional demeanor in places, but he delivered the most fabulously powerful performance of The Damnation of Faust ever, a superb Symphonie Fantastique. He did Harold in Italy twice, albeit with a cut in the finale the first time. I think he did it twice. Anyway, maybe he just did it with a cut in the finale. I have to get caught up on all these Berliozians, I guess. But he was a tremendous, tremendous conductor in that music. And I think because he did conduct it with a certain level of discipline and structural integrity that we don't always hear in Berlioz conducting. Sometimes it's just like all over the place. Markevitch was never all over the place. Markevitch kept his head. And there's a tension between the sort of cool, severe outlines and the craziness of the music, because despite his own, I don't know, whatever his intellectual or emotional equipment was, he really knew how to use orchestral color and to get a fabulous sound out of these French orchestras he used, the Lamoureux Orchestra, wow, baby, and even the Berlin Philharmonic. There was something about him. He could get an idiomatic sound anywhere. And so, Igor Markevitch was a tremendous Berlioz conductor. Colin Davis, of course. Now we end with the two biggies. Colin Davis was a fantastic Berlioz conductor, and he made it his a linchpin of his career. You know, Davis's career was like Mozart, Sibelius, Berlioz, and Tippett. And that's Colin Davis right there in a nutshell. His Berlioz was a lifelong project. He recorded many things twice, including Les Troyens and, you know, all the major works. Really kind of astonishing. And he did them with a very highly sustained level of excellence. You know, Davis could be really catch as catch can. He was a Berliozian romantic, sort of emotionally. I mean, he had some emotional issues and things like that in his career, in his life, but he was a spontaneous and passionate conductor. And he could be hot or cold in Sibelius and other things. Mozart, I think he was always really good in too. But with Berlioz, he found a kindred spirit, and he made magnificent Berlioz recordings, including, you know, one of the still the ultimate Les Troyens, the first one on Philips, which is absolutely amazing, and superb performances of The Damnation of Faust, Romeo and Juliet, which he did multiple times. And I was never too fond of his Symphonie Fantastique, but Harold in Italy, splendid, and he did all the major stuff, and it's all excellent. It really is. And last, but certainly not least, Charles Munch. Charles Munch was really, I don't know, there's something about the guy that was just perfect for Berlioz. He had the French elegance and polish with total emotional hysteria and this sort of brooding Germanic romanticism. He was Alsatian after all, so he gets both, you know, the French and the German stuff, you know. And when he got the Boston Symphony, he had the ideal orchestra for French repertoire, because none of the French orchestras at that time, you know, they weren't great. They were characterful, like the Paris Conservatory Orchestra. You know, they were interesting to listen to. They really were, from a historic point of view. But if you wanted to hear Berlioz at white-hot intensity, played with just unbridled virtuosity, Charles Munch was your guy. And his recordings, some of them still haven't been equaled, really. The 1962 Symphonie Fantastique, his Requiem, which is unbelievably fabulous. I mean, he recorded the Berlioz Requiem multiple times, but that RCA recording is just unbeatable. It's incredible. His overtures are stunning. Really just an amazing, amazing Berlioz conductor. He's always been acknowledged as such, and I'm certainly not going to, you know, try and rock the boat by suggesting otherwise. You'd have to be crazy, I mean, or deaf or something like that. So those are the 5 greatest Berlioz conductors. I can think of a couple others who could be on the list, and I'm very curious to see if you pick them up and put them on your list. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.